One of the most difficult things to do in Osirix is to make a good brain model. And the reason is of the tight tolerances between the brain and the surrounding tissues. So if we look here at the sigmoid sinus and the sagittal sinus, they're very close to the brain, and the only way to get them out is to cut them out. You can't use the windowing to remove them. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you a technique for tracing slice by slice and how to save your ROIs. And unfortunately it takes a very long time, but it's the only way that I've found to be able to create a decent brain model in Osirix. I'm going to start by deleting all the ROIs in the series. I'm going to get the pencil tool, which is D, and I'm going to trace exactly along the interface between gray matter and CSF. One of the things that will help you is to scroll back and forth through the series of slices before you begin this process, so that you're aware what you want to remove. You think you would know, but very often you get in here and you think, oh gosh, I don't even know, and you have to delete the ROI and start over. You can modify the ROI, but it's almost easier just to redraw it than it is to modify. The tools for modifying it aren't great. Okay, so that's about the level of fidelity that we want. And if we scroll up and down here, I'll give you some for instances. Let's see here. So if you follow this is the dura right in here. If you look at it, it kind of disappears into the gyri right here. Well, we can see the distance in here, so that means that slice needs to be traced right through there. So I would trace that like this. And I have a Cintiq. Let's see here. I'll have to fix that. I have a Cintiq that I use for doing this, and I think it's probably a little bit faster than a Wacom. Gives you a little bit better hand-eye coordination. So I wasn't zoomed out far enough when I began this trace, so I couldn't really see the bottom of that. So this will be a good one to show you how to do the modification. And I'm going to try to do this entire brain and show you sequences of it along the way. All right. So there are several ways you can modify an ROI or a region of interest. One is just by clicking on the point and moving it. Okay, so you can move the individual points. And to be honest, that's probably the most exact way to do it. There is something called the repulsor tool, which is R. It's that big red thing right there. And what you can do is you can click outside of the spline. You'll see this yellow orb, and it shows you the radius. It's like an inverse magnet tool. And it will repel the spline and push it in like that, and you can use it on either side. Notice it gets smaller the closer I get to the spline. So if I click very, very far away, I get this big thing, and I can but that's not really, it's not a great tool, and it's very time consuming and it's very slow. So, but it's good for doing stuff like this, moving this back in. All right. All right, so we need to, believe it or not, we need to trace every single slice. Now, there are a few things I want you to know. The first thing and the most important thing are how to save your ROIs. You have to save them in this way. Now, that's fixed, that's saved. So if we were to delete this, we could go through and say import ROIs and get that back. Okay, and it would bring back all the ROIs in the series. I guess we don't have any other ones, but it would save all the ROIs in the series. Okay, yeah, there was one other one, and it was right there. All right, so that's how to save the ROIs. And then once we've traced every, and the other thing is that you only want to have one ROI. So it might be tempting when you get down here to have an ROI for the brain, and then also if you one of these nerves, right? So you trace the brain. Let's say you trace the brain like this, and then you're like, oh, and I also want to trace these. Well, the problem with that is that when you go to set black outside of the ROIs, it will make this entire slide black, and so you don't want that, right? So the way you would do this is you would bring this out and encompass this area, okay? And you can use the repulsor tool to get in here. Let's see here, R for repulsor, and you could push it in like this. I wouldn't worry about that. I would just, you'll get a hang for it, the hang of it, and you'll be able to watch me doing it in a later demo. I'll do several slices. I'll try to do most of the I'll try to do a significant portion of the brain so you get an idea of where you're supposed to trace. This is way too far. This would create a terrible model. All right. Okay, so the end result here, and I'm going to go ahead and do it now, even though you really would only do this at the very end, after you save. So once you finish tracing every slice, you would go through and save all your ROIs, save it as a new name. Then you would go through and you would set the pixel values of the ROI to black, outside of the ROI, right? So we want all this area outside here to be black. Let's see here. You have to have the ROI selected for some reason. I'm still not sure why that is. All ROIs, outside ROIs, and this needs to be set to 0. Okay? And again, the ROI on that particular slice has to be selected. Okay? Now, if we go through here and we scroll, only the slices that have ROIs will you see any data, and it will just be the stuff inside the ROI on a particular slice. And that's useful because if you, for instance, the brain might not start until around in here, so you don't have to trace ROIs on that slide. You wouldn't be tracing ROIs on there anyhow, and it just knows that all those are supposed to be completely black. All right, so if we were to make a 3D volume rendering of this now, we wouldn't see much. We would see something like this, which is actually kind of cool. We would see these slices hanging out in space, right? Because that's where the ROIs are. Make sense? All right, in the next video, I'm going to go through and show you how to trace all those slices. All right, and it's a very, very useful tool, and it allows you to create a beautiful, beautiful brain model. Okay, I'll get back with you in the next video.